what the Distal Method is all about. You know, there is the detailed way and there is also the big picture way to present a story. Granted, one might get lost into the details, or it could be that the big picture would add much appreciated context to the details coming next. So, to this end, let's use the technique of storytelling now to present the Distal Method the big picture way. Later on, you will have every opportunity to delve into all the necessary details. So, the technique I'm going to use is storytelling. Through two stories, I will attempt to give a bird's eye view of what this is all about. The two main themes of the Distal Method will be explained, namely what distal means and how growth happens, or rather how it does not happen. The term distal actually came into my mind as I was studying the classic work of Ernst Mayr, The Growth of Biological Thought. Here you see it in Greek, and it's called in Greek η ανάπτυξη της βιολογικής σκέψης. In case you wondered how it is in Greek. The scene in our story, Mayr's story, is set in the autumn period. Winter is coming and animals adapt to the changes in temperature, food availability, daylight, and so on. The differences that animals feel in their immediate environments trigger some acute biological processes in their bodies, such as the secretion of certain hormones and maybe some other signaling molecules. So, a bear is preparing for hibernation and swallows are preparing for migration. These adaptations may be called acute, mediate, or proximal. We can easily interfere with them. For example, some hummingbirds may choose to not migrate if they get fed during the winter. What is important is that they have adaptation mechanisms. But can they exchange roles? Can hummingbirds hibernate instead of migrating? And bears migrate instead of hibernating? This adaptation mechanism is not affected by the change between seasons. Actually, it is a mechanism that took millions of years to evolve. Hibernation and migration in this case. It is very hard to change it, and it has led into long-term adaptations, or in other words, in distal adaptations. Distal adaptations are persistent and really difficult to change. Even if they are related, since both mechanisms were developed in response to seasonal food scarcity, these two mechanisms, the proximal and the distal ones, are completely different. So different that the proximal and the distal adaptations are even studied from different scientific fields. Distal adaptations has everything to do with evolutionary biology, while proximal mechanisms are closely studied by molecular biology. One cannot achieve distal adaptations through proximal mechanisms. In the Distal Method, as we will see in much more detail in the next sections, performance or proximal mechanisms and adaptations cannot affect the distal learning adaptations. Why is that? Even though this question will be our main concern in what comes in the next sections, here we may approach it with an analogy, the farmer and the seeds. And this brings us to our next story. You see, a farmer may plant some seeds. This is usually not enough to see them grow. The farmer has to cultivate the soil, water the seeds, use fertilizers, and even protect the seeds from birds and maybe some other animals. However, the animal has no control over the mechanism of growth of the seeds. She may only take care of the environment. Seeds grow on their own, through their own biological mechanisms. If one would plant pieces of plastic, no matter what they'd do, the pieces of plastic would never grow. See what I mean? There is only so much that one can actually do. As if this wasn't already enough, some real seeds may still never grow. Maybe they fall on hard soil, maybe rodents eat them or fire burns them. The farmer may only try to make the environment as friendly as possible and then hope and expect seeds to grow. Sure, we are so used in seeing seeds growing after we plant them that we feel as if we control their growth. Nothing could be further from the truth, though. Indeed, it would be more accurate to speak of a miracle rather than a process we fully understand, let alone control. In learning now, it is a very easy and a very usual mistake, a mistake deeply rooted in arrogance and wishful thinking, that teachers make learners learn. Working sometime in special needs education quickly destroys this myth, as it did in my case at least. So, the Distal method helps teachers, educators, and of course, coaches and counselors to focus fully and exclusively to the correct mechanisms of learning, the distal mechanisms, as we will, of course, see them in detail.